It is through trees that we appreciate and judge the strength of the wind. To make this much noise, the leaves must still be on the trees, although the wind is busy blowing them off, bashing the branches together to shake them free. It is as if the wind was sent especially to do the job. Look at this tree right here. Like, doesn't it look like animals would live in it right there? This one on the far end down there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Friends, you and I went out exploring for places where woodland creatures may live.
Right.
My lips are weird because my lipstick is weird. Hold on, I gotta do it again.
Okay.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. Today I want to share with you guys the stuff that I've been reading in the last week. Just some real cozy reading, just like chill out, read what I want, do what I want, think what I want. It's just been a really relaxed week. It is about 75 degrees here in Northwest Arkansas, so I am not sipping any kind of cozy warm drink. I am sipping, what is this called? Dragon Fruit Fusion Herbal Tea. This I got from the Spice and Tea Exchange. We have one in Bentonville. They have a website. This is the best. In this bag, total, like when you buy it, there's probably enough for barely a gallon. Like 4 quart jars. Probably would be better with 3, but I'm trying to make it last. So this is about 1/4 of the bag. And so I've been brewing since, I think I put it in last night. Yeah, so yum. And it is supposed to cool off a little bit more. We're supposed to be getting some rain and cooler temperatures. But by that, I mean like, 50s, 60s. We don't really get super cold weather until later in January. or February, but every now and then we'll have a really cold day. So, but we're just, you know, doing our best. On the flip side, back home in Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, there is all kinds of snow and ice and crazy stuff going on, which I terribly miss. But anyway, we're not talking about the weather, we're talking about books. I have, how many do I have here? So I finished 5 this week, and like I said, just some cozy reads. So let's start with The Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was my first time reading this. I know. I gave it 4 stars. I did enjoy it. I'm going to be asking for this boxed set for future gifts on my book wish list, right? It wasn't as fantastic as I had thought it would be. I have seen the movie a couple of times, not like glued to the screen, but just kind of like it's playing in the background while I'm doing stuff. But I don't know. I did really like it. It just wasn't like epically amazing. So I do want to read the others in the series. Apparently this is book 2. I haven't read any of the others either, so I do want to read them. There are 2 things that annoyed me about this story. One of them is pretty petty, and that is that when the kids like grow up, at the portion of the story that happens, they speak like they're in an Elizabethan play. And I think the idea is that they've been in Narnia for a really long time, and so they have adopted the language. However, the people in Narnia don't speak in that Elizabethan English to begin with, that I can tell. So it was kind of abrupt and sort of weird, because where did they learn it, right? Where did they learn that language? So that kind of bugged me. But the major part that really bugged me about this story, that I can't just kind of blow off, is every character, whether it be human, animal, mythical, whatever, is either a mythology or an allegory, right? Everybody they talk about is either somebody pretend, or something allegorical, mythical being, whatever, except for Adam and Eve. And the fact that C.S. Lewis chose to interject the myth about Lilith, Adam's supposed first wife, who is the daughter of Satan and all this, that really rubbed me the wrong way, because either we're saying that there is some truth to that Lilith myth, or we're saying that Adam and Eve is part of that great big allegory mythical world. And maybe I'm overthinking that, but that just really stuck out to me. So I gave it 4 stars, but it's really more like 3 with like 1 extra star for the obligatory it's a classic and therefore I must give it more stars thing. All right, and then I read this cute little book. This I got for my birthday from one of my friends in London, and this is Little Grey Rabbit's Birthday by Alison Utley. I had been wanting to read things by Alison Utley. She's kind of like a Beatrix Potter, Bramley Hedge sort of writer. This particular book was probably written for like really little kids. It's very repetitive. It's kind of like got that like, this is the house that Jack built. This is the dog that sat on the porch of the house that Jack built. This is the cat that chased the dog that sat on the porch of the house that Jack built. You know, it's just kind of like really repetitive like that, right? And so I think it was made for little kids who think that's cute and can kind of like sing song along with it. But it was a cute story. I did enjoy it. And I have another one by her. And then, of course, I'm going to look for more. All right, and then I read Before We Say Goodbye by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and the cover, Barnes & Noble apparently kind of like, I was reading on the website, they say they have the special effects covers. So here's your special effects, folks. Doo, doo, doo. And so I read this. You guys who have read this series are probably laughing at me in my last video. So I was talking about how I've read the first one, Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Then I picked one up and read it, and it turned out to be the third one, which is Before Your Memory Fades, I think. So then I was like, okay, well, I've read the first and the third. Now I got to go get the second. So I went and got this. I swear I thought it was the second. It's the fourth. So now I've read the first, the third, and the fourth, and I still haven't read the second. I don't know what reading list I was looking at, but I really thought it said this was the next one. But then if you look at like the list in here, it leaves this one out. It says also by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, which is probably the second book, and Before Your Memory Fades, which is, oh wait, this is the fourth, third. Never mind. I just can't count. Anyway, I enjoyed it to the degree that I've enjoyed the other ones. I do think that this one is probably my favorite. This one had like elements of hope that I felt the others, especially the third one, was lacking. If you're not familiar with the stories, it's basically there's this coffee shop in Japan. On book 3 it changes to a different coffee shop in a different place, but there's a certain chair at a certain table in the coffee shop. You can sit at the coffee shop table. If you sit at that table and they pour you a cup of coffee, then you can be transported back to any place in the future or the past that you want to go, and meet with someone that you want to meet with, as long as that person has also visited the coffee shop sometime in the past or future before your timeline moment, right? So doing the future is a little complicated because like somebody has to set that up for you, but the past is a lot more easy. And so people will sit in that chair and they transport themselves right back to the place and they have the conversation. They can only stay there as long as it takes the coffee to get cold. Once the coffee gets cold, they have to drink all of it right before it gets actual cold, right? Whatever temperature, nobody knows, it's arbitrary, but there is a thermometer that you can stick in your cup that will help let you know. It'll beep, it'll go off when it's getting almost, when it's like right there, right? Just before it gets cold. The thermometer knows. So you gotta drink up all that coffee and then you can come back to your present time. If you don't, you die, so it's a good idea to pay attention. But anyway, they're little stories that just talk about different people and why they wanted to go to a certain timeline to meet a certain person and why, and their hesitancies. And they also are pretty repetitive. Like it just always explains the rules again and again and again. Personally, I think they could be done differently. Just tell you the rules at the beginning of the book and leave them out of the other stories, but it's okay. Anyway, they're not awesome. They're probably more awesome in Japanese. I don't really love the translation, but out of all the Japanese translated books, I think this series is probably the best translated that I've read, and give the most depth of emotion, but still, that's also relative. So I mostly buy them because one of my younger daughters loves to read them after me, so I let her read them. All right, and so for this next one, this is called Life Was Simpler Then by Lula Grace Erdman. I've had this on my shelf forever, and this month I'm really trying to kind of attack my TBR shelf with a vengeance. I joined the Read What You Own challenge, where you kind of set yourself a goal and you don't buy any new books until you've reached that goal of reading books that you own. And I really love to buy books during this season, so I kind of, changed it a little bit and just made it where anything that I do acquire has to go on the bottom shelf of my cart until I get through my 25, and then I can sort of incorporate that back into my TBR shelf. So anyway, because of that, I've been just picking off kind of random books. I've DNF'd a lot this week. In fact, at the end of this, I will go through my DNFs, because there's quite a few actually. I meant to bring that notebook out here and I forgot. But anyway, so this book I've had on there forever. I haven't been super interested in reading it, but sometimes when I'm in the mood, I do like to read kind of these books that are set in kind of like post-Civil War, pre-World War I sort of era. They got to be like a memoir, right? So like somebody's memoir of growing up, kind of like Little House on the Prairie series is. And so that's sort of what this one I think was trying to do as well. This girl had published this in the early 60s. She was writing about right around the turn of the century, maybe in the 19 teens even, of her childhood in Western Missouri. I did enjoy the nostalgia, kind of like the nostalgic looks back into her, past and her time with her siblings and all that kind of stuff. But I failed to really be drawn kind of to that time, just because she had kind of an attitude of superiority where, her time was so much better than the time period she was living in. And right now, like, there is just this kind of overarching theme of my life where I really want to be content where I'm at, right? And I really don't want to be looking for greener grass elsewhere. And so that just kind of bugged me just because of my own personal, mental health goals as far as that whole thing goes. Hair's driving me nuts. I was gonna have my hair up. Makes me crazy to have it down. I like having it down, but there's just so much of it. My hair is getting really long, by the way. Like, look how long my hair is getting. Alright, anyway. Tangent, back to the book. I just found it kind of ironic that, like, she is... When we look back on the 1960s, the early 60s especially, in the 50s and whatever, and even the 40s, even during the wartime, we look back with nostalgia and we think, life was so much more simpler then. And she is living in those times thinking how much life was so much more simpler when she was younger, right? And so I think that, that's kind of funny. She thought it was that bad. She should probably come over to 2025 for a little while. But the truth is that every era just has its own good and bad stuff, and it affects you depending on what you've experienced, right? I mean, for me, even though I live in 2025 and my world is really messed up, my own little world here in the forest, in my little house with my foresty backyard and my kids and my bread and just chilling here is probably way simpler and easier and more relaxing than a lot of people lived in the past. I don't have to do a whole lot to live healthy and full and thriving and peaceful. Like, I have it pretty cushy, right? So it really does depend on your circumstances also. But I don't know, most of the stories they were fun to read about the time, but her just sense of, my time was so much better and the 1960s really stink and here's all the reasons why. That just kind of ruined it for me. And I think that's just because I'm looking back with an attitude of nostalgia about the 60s even, right? So there could just be my perspective. But one thing that I was thinking when I was reading this, so over Passover week, this past spring, one of the guys from our church, he's kind of an older guy and he, has lots of wisdom he likes to share and stuff. And he got on our private Facebook group and he had this quote and it said, "Beware the leaven of nostalgia." And he talked about how we let the past just get so puffed up in our minds, right? And we think about all the great stuff and how the past is so much better and it's too bad we can't live there anymore and nothing can ever compare, that we do miss the present. We miss what is actually going on and what is really great right now, right? We've allowed that nostalgia to puff up inside of our minds and become bigger than it was and better than it was. And that just really affected me, right? I was like, yeah, exactly. We have to be careful of that because if we are looking too far into the past, we miss what is now. So I still love to read books from, the past. Of course, that's my primary love. I don't really like to read a lot of modern stuff. And I will continue and, my memoirs and biographies and stuff from the past, totally fine. I just need to be careful that I remember they had their hardships too, and to try to compare or to mold my life in such a way that I'm sort of denying what's going on now, right, in favor of trying to live in the past, like that can be really dangerous. And then some of you are going to be so proud of me. I finished Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. So it's actually been really funny to hear some of y'all's reactions about my thoughts on Thomas Hardy. One of you was like, I thought you would love Thomas Hardy. And I thought I would too. It's not that I don't. I'm really not sure how I feel about Thomas Hardy right now. So apparently Far from the Madding Crowd was one of his earlier novels. and some of the other well-known novels were written 10, 15 years later. I did not know that until I finished it, so I will give him a little grace there. But this book was a struggle. I have read dozens and dozens and dozens of Victorian novels, so it's not that I'm having a problem with the language or the setting or relating, or it's just that this was my first foray into the world of Thomas Hardy, and it's different. I still don't feel like I really get his writing style, and I have been reading this book off and on for quite a few weeks. Like, I've had time to think and contemplate, make lots of videos to myself, little voice notes about things. I kind of feel like he was trying out a bunch of different stuff with this novel and never really settled on a specific writing style. It's just not super cohesive. Like, something that I was noticing, maybe I was just noticing it, maybe he wasn't even meaning to do this, but like the first part of the book where he's describing Gabriel Oak, who is very simple, super intelligent, super, deep, just also simple. A simple person who lives a simple life. The writing was very simple. It was almost like a child was writing it using really big words. I don't know how to explain it. I remember I just kind of like rattled off this whole like voice note to myself about this, because it wasn't really deep, descriptive writing that, there wasn't a lot of depth to it. It was just kind of plain and to the point. And it bugged me for a little bit until I thought maybe that's because he's writing about a person who is just kind of plain and to the point. If so, that would make him a genius, right? Not a lousy writer, a genius. So then I get to reading about, was it Boldwood that came next? Boldwood that came next. And he, gives lots of flowery speeches and petitions. And the writing seemed to change. It seemed to get flowery and petition-y. It seemed to get very moody and deep, and started to describe settings better and atmosphere and whatever. And I was like, okay, maybe this is super genius. But then Trojan Horse Troy comes on the scene, and it just kind of stays the way he was writing Boldwood. It just kind of doesn't. I mean, it could have went a different direction, right? It could have been a very distinct change with him coming on the scene as well. But it didn't, and so I was like, maybe not genius, maybe it was just an improvement as he went along. I don't know. I was probably just making things up. I look for symbolism and everything, so I was probably just making it up. But I think part of the reason why it didn't seem cohesive was that it was serialized, right? So he's writing it over the course of time. But I've read lots of other serialized things, and anyway, I think he was just practicing. I think it was just something new. I don't know. He builds a strong atmosphere, right? But he fails to make me feel the moods of that atmosphere. His character development is great. I mean, it's really fantastic, to the point where he's naming people in ways that symbolize who they are in the story, right? But I didn't really develop strong feelings one way or another about anyone. And these symbolic names that he's given them, they walk in the opposite of that meaning just as much as they walk in it, right? So we've got Bathsheba, right? She's irresistible yet abused, innocent person, except for when she brought it on herself, right? So she wasn't always innocent, and she wasn't always, irresistible. Then we've got the Trojan horse princess stealing Troy, but he also had moments of compassion and weakness and regret, which softened his character a lot. Then we have Boldwood, right? He's this firm resolve, but he also crumbled off the deep end. So I don't know. I'm overanalyzing, I'm sure. But the only character really that stayed steady and strong, true throughout, was our beloved Gabriel Oak. The strong influence with the quiet nature. So he got Gabriel Oak right. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it is that all the other characters sort of were unstable. They were wishy-washy, back and forth between you know, what they should be and what they sometimes let themselves be, but not Gabriel Oak, right? Maybe everybody had to be unstable, so it would point out even more his stability. Is the story about Bathsheba, or is the story about Gabriel? Who is the main character? Who is the story meant to be written about? There's a lot of analytics that could go into this. I just don't know. I don't know if I'm up for it. If I were a Victorian encountering little bits of the story a little bit at a time, I don't really know how well I would stick with it. As a 21st century American, I'm really thankful that the chapters were as tiny as they were for a serialization, because otherwise I feel like I would just be, it was already felt like a drudge to read this. So knowing that the chapter is like 3 pages long, right? I don't know what it is about that. It's psychological, but it makes me feel like I'm moving through the story quicker. I didn't feel like anything really exciting happened until like the last 10 pages, and then everything that happened is everything that the reader wanted to happen anyway. I didn't hate this story, but it was like an obvious story, and the community scenes are like super Miss Marple, which I did really enjoy that a lot. Because of that, I think I would like to see this on screen, right? I think that I would enjoy probably a film or TV series of this story more than this book, and then maybe I would like the book better. I don't know. I did see one just for a second. I didn't read about it. I just kind of saw an image when I was searching information about this book. I think it has Carrie, you know, Carrie, what's her name? Hold on. Yeah, Carrie Mulligan. I do like her. Maybe I should watch that. You guys let me know what you think. Have you seen a film or TV adaptation of this? Did you like this? Do you like Thomas Hardy? Like, help me out here, because I do need to read more Thomas Hardy. I have at least Tess of the Dubervilles on my 50 by 50. This is on my 50 by 50, so this is my first read from that. So I gotta read at least one more, but I kind of would like to read everything. All right, so I finished that last night, promptly went to sleep afterwards. And then, so today I have been kind of poking around in notes from Walnut Tree Farm. I've been trying to read this as close as I can to the date that I'm on. This is Roger Deakins' diary. He is someone who is more well known in the UK, I believe. Every time I read about what he's well known for, I forget. I apologize if that's really offensive to somebody. But anyway, they took his diaries and they took out like the really great parts, and then they put it together in this like seasonal compilation. So each chapter is like a different month, and then everything that he wrote about during that month, or if it applies, you know, they put it in there, and then they put in dates where they can. So I read up until the 21st of November, and we're on the 16th of November, but I've been reading a little bit at a time. I really am enjoying this for the most part. Every now and then there's kind of like, you know, sleazy guy humor, which kind of grosses me out, but it's only been a couple of times and it's so few and far between that I'm kind of like, okay, I'll put up with that. But for the most part, they're really just thoughtful and inspiring little pieces, little journal entries on nature and kind of his creativity, things that he does with the things that he finds in nature. You know, you find him using things to make different inks. You find him using like a pulp to make a sculpture. Like he does like this whole thing with like the pulp from a fig, I think. Like he digs out whatever he didn't eat of this fig pulp, and then he forms it into a sculpture and then lets it dry, and then like there was a couple other steps I can't remember. Then he paints it. He has like this fig pulp sculpture, and that's just interesting. And that's the kind of stuff that I feel like if I had a whole day just to ding around, just to sit outside and do whatever, like I can see myself doing stuff like that. So it's the kind of stuff that I think that I'll probably do here in a few years when, you know, I'm not schooling anybody anymore and I'm just like poking around my backyard in the forest, just looking for interesting things. You might find me making pulp sculptures here before long, so stay tuned. And then I picked out these 2 books for possibly reading today. I started What is Art by Leo Tolstoy. This is a book of essays that he wrote just about, they're probably rambly, but the idea of art should be more than just like creating things of beauty, but that it should serve as a mechanism to teach like morality, and even just, it says for the back of it says as a force for the advancement of humankind. But he was kind of talking about art mixing with science and religion to help humanity just be better people at their core. And so I've just now started it. I have not gotten very far at all, but apparently he attacks Shakespeare, Beethoven, Michelangelo, all kinds of different people. So that is that may be interesting. It has a potential, anyway, of being interesting. And then I also pulled out this book, Followed by the Lark by Helen Humphreys, and this is a fictional story about Henry David Thoreau and his time at Woodland Pond. And it looks like it's a fairly short read, and like it's 200 pages or something, but it's broken up with all of these little, birdie things. So usually when that happens, it's because it's hopping from scene to scene fairly quickly. And not that I just want to fly through something, but if I don't like it, but I've gotten farther enough in it to have to keep reading. Does that sound pessimistic? It's pessimistic because of all of these DNFs. Let me go get my DNF notebook. All right. That made it sound like I have a notebook that is specifically dedicated to DNFs. I do not. However, this page might end up being mostly dedicated to DNFs. So I basically have a page for the Read What You Own challenge. And I'm writing out 25 books, and then I'll put all those, from my cart onto my shelf and start over again, probably, because this is really fun and motivating. I don't know, I'm just one of those people that's like super motivated by like getting it done. Like if I have a list, I just want to check things off. So again, it's psychological, but let's see. After reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I DNF'd 2 books and unhauled 3. So I DNF'd The Violins of St. Jacques by Patrick Leigh Fermor, and that was just a soft DNF. I just put it back on my shelf and I will read it later. I just wasn't getting into it, but I think I probably could in a different mood in the future. I started reading the Jane Austen mystery series by Stephanie Barron. Those little, if you've seen those little black paper books. And I've tried to read this series several times before, but I just cannot get into it, and I think that they are too wordy. I think they're kind of trying too hard to be Regency. Like, she's more Regency than Jane Austen herself, as far as big words and flowery whatevers. Just like, come on, it couldn't really be like this. It just really, I read a lot into it, and it just didn't seem like the story was really rolling. And I've felt that way in the past, and I've always DNF'd them. I'm like, it's Jane Austen, I gotta read them. It's Stephanie Barron, she's a fairly decent writer. Like, I need to read these. And so just for years, I've been trying to read them. Well, this time I DNF'd it, and then I went and read about it on Goodreads. And so many people have said the same thing, that it takes forever for the mystery. Like, the mystery is like at the end of the book. And what? Right? That's just... So I decided, you know what, I'm just giving up on these. So I actually had the first 4. I put them all in my Etsy shop because they were published in the 90s. So if you want to read these, now that I've run them in the ground, you can get them on my Etsy shop. The link is in the description. But otherwise, I don't know. I just kind of do it. All right. And then I read 3 books, and then I unhauled one called The Fledgling by Elizabeth Cadell, because it basically tells you the entire story on, like, the dust jacket. Like, the whole thing. What's the point of that? So, it didn't actually sound like that great of a story anyway. So, DNF that, or unhauled that. And then last night I DNF'd Upstream by Mary Oliver. So it's a collection of Mary Oliver's essays. I was curious about Mary Oliver. I've heard a couple of people talk about her, but then I've heard one other person say she just wasn't the poet for her. So I was kind of back and forth, not sure. She's not the writer for me. Mary Oliver, no. I just read these, I was like, what? Anyway, I don't want to ruin it for you if you love her, but I did not. So I DNF'd that collection. And then I DNF'd Questioning the Millennium by Stephen Jay Gould. I had got this book kind of just as a joke to look back nostalgically on the last months of 1999. Did you see the squirrel? That was cool. I hope you guys saw that. To look back on the last few months of 1999 and all of the big fear about, you know, the Y2K crisis and all that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of hoping it would be sort of a look at that, about how people are feeling about that. And it kind of was, but it was like way philosophical, sciencey, not me sort of writing. So I looked up Stephen Jay Gould, and yeah, I probably wouldn't enjoy anything he wrote. So I DNF'd that and decided to finish Thomas Hardy instead. I spent all day yesterday reading that book. I think that's another thing that's annoying me about the Thomas Hardy book, is this should not have taken me as long as it did to read it. It took me a really long time. The story itself, I think, was like 354 pages or something. The writing was really tiny, but really, it should not have taken me that long. So glad I'm done with that story. I think it should be one of those Victorian stories that has like a subtitle that is like longer than the title. You know, it could be like Far from the Madding Crowd, or A Really Long Maddening Story by Thomas Hardy. All right, that's all I got. I'm gonna be done now. There's a lot going on in my forest right now. There's squirrels everywhere. And the funny thing about it is that the squirrels are usually louder than the deer. So that's amazing. And, you know, super cool that they can do that. I guess the deer know how careful they need to be. And the squirrels are like, can't catch me. All right, I hope everybody's doing well. I will see you soon. Goodbye.